The rain came down hard that Tuesday evening, the kind that soaks you through in seconds. Derek stood at his usual post near the main entrance of Riverside Mall, watching the last few shoppers hurry toward their cars. His shift was almost over, just 15 more minutes until closing time. Derek had been working security at this mall for 3 years now. It wasn't glamorous work, but he took pride in it. He knew most of the regular shoppers by face, helped lost kids find their parents, and made sure everyone felt safe. His supervisor always said Derek had a gift for dealing with people, that he treated everyone the same whether they wore designer clothes or thrift store finds. As Derek made his rounds through the food court, he noticed someone moving slowly near the tables. An elderly man, probably in his late 70s, was struggling with a walker. The man's clothes looked worn and faded, his jacket thin and completely soaked from the rain. He seemed confused, turning one way and then another like he couldn't quite figure out where he was supposed to go. Derek watched as people walked past the old man. Some didn't even look up from their phones. Others glanced at him and quickly looked away as if poverty might be contagious. One woman actually pulled her shopping bags closer as she passed, like she thought he might snatch them. Something about the scene bothered Derek. Maybe it reminded him of his own grandfather, who'd passed away 2 years ago. Or maybe it was just the basic decency his mother had drilled into him since childhood. Either way, Derek couldn't just walk past. "Excuse me, sir," Derek said gently as he approached. "You doing okay? Can I help you with something?" The old man looked up, and Derek noticed his eyes were a pale blue, watery but kind. He seemed almost startled that someone had spoken to him. "Oh well," the man said, his voice shaky. "I'm trying to find the exit. I came in through the west entrance, but now I can't seem to remember where that was. Everything looks the same, you know. These malls, they're like mazes," Derek smiled. "Yeah, they really are. That west exit is pretty far from here. How about I walk you there? It's no trouble at all." "You don't have to do that, young man. I'm sure you're busy." "Sir, making sure people get where they need to go is literally my job. Plus, we're about to close anyway. Come on, I'll take you." As they walked slowly through the mall, adjusting to the pace of the walker, the old man introduced himself as Henry. Just Henry, nothing more. Derek noticed that Henry's hands were shaking slightly on the walker's handles and his breathing seemed a bit labored. "You waiting for someone to pick you up?" Derek asked. No. I take the bus. Stops right outside." Derek glanced at Henry's soaked jacket again. The temperature had dropped at least 15 degrees since the afternoon, and the rain showed no signs of stopping. The old man was shivering. They reached the west exit, and through the glass doors, Derek could see the rain coming down even harder now. The bus stop was across the parking lot, maybe 100 yards away. Henry would be drenched again before he even got there. Derek made a decision. "Hold on 1 second, okay?" Before Henry could protest, Derek jogged to the security office. His coworker, Tom, looked up from his phone. "Hey, I'm taking my dinner break," Derek said, knowing full well his shift was almost over anyway. He grabbed his personal jacket from his locker, the nice waterproof one his sister had given him for Christmas. It was one of the few expensive things he owned. When Derek returned, Henry was still standing by the door looking small and tired. "Here," Derek said, holding out the jacket. "Take this." "Oh no, I couldn't. That's your jacket. Sir, you're going to catch pneumonia in that wet coat, I insist. Besides, I've got another one at home." That was a lie, but Derek figured he could manage. Henry's eyes got misty, and for a second, Derek thought the old man might cry. "That's very kind of you, son." "Very kind indeed." Derek helped Henry into the jacket, which was way too big for his thin frame but would at least keep him dry. Then he did something else that was definitely not in the employee handbook. He grabbed one of the umbrellas from the mall's lost and found, one that had been sitting there for months with no one claiming it. "Come on," Derek said. "I'm walking you to that bus stop." They made their way across the parking lot, Derek holding the umbrella over Henry while getting soaked himself. The old man moved slowly, carefully, and Derek matched his pace without complaint. When they finally reached the bus stop's small shelter, Derek checked his watch. "Your bus should be here in about 8 minutes, he said, having memorized the routes from helping so many shoppers over the years. "You don't have to wait with me," Henry said. "You've done more than enough already. It's fine. I want to make sure you get on okay." So they stood there in the shelter, watching the rain create rivers in the parking lot. Henry asked Derek about his job, and Derek found himself talking more than he usually did. He mentioned working at the mall for 3 years, helping his mom with bills since his dad passed, making sure his younger sister could focus on her college classes instead of working full-time. "You're supporting your whole family?" Henry asked. Derek shrugged. "We all do what we have to do, right? Mom had some health issues last year. Medical bills piled up. My sister's smart, really smart. She deserves her chance at college. Somebody's got to make sure she gets it." "What about your chance?" Henry asked quietly. Derek smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I had a semester at community college. Business management. But life happens, you know. Maybe I'll go back someday." The bus finally appeared through the rain, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Derek helped Henry up the steps, making sure he was seated safely before stepping back down. "Thank you," Henry said from his seat. "Thank you so much. What's your full name, son?" "Derek Johnson, sir." "Derek Johnson," Henry repeated like he was memorizing it. "You're a good man, Derek. Your parents raised you right." Derek felt his cheeks warm at the compliment. "Just trying to help out, that's all. You take care now, okay?" As the bus pulled away, Derek stood in the rain and waved. Henry waved back from his window, and Derek noticed the old man was crying. Walking back to the mall, Derek was completely soaked. His teeth chattered, and he knew he'd probably feel this cold in his bones tomorrow. But somehow he felt good. Really good. Like he'd done something that mattered, even if it was small. He had no idea that this simple act of kindness would change his entire life. He had no idea that the frail old man he'd just helped onto a bus was worth more money than Derek could imagine. He had no idea that 2 weeks from now, everything he thought he knew about his future would be turned upside down. All Derek knew was that he'd helped someone who needed it, and that was enough. For him, it had always been enough. That night, when Derek got home to his small apartment, his mother asked why he was soaking wet and where his good jacket was. He just smiled and said he'd left it at work. Some things, he figured, were better kept to himself. At least for now. 2 weeks passed, and Derek had almost forgotten about the old man in the rain. Almost, but not quite. Every now and then, when he saw someone elderly struggling with their bags or looking lost, he'd think about Henry and wonder if he was doing okay. Derek had never gotten his jacket back, but honestly, he didn't expect to. The old man probably needed it more than he did. It was a Thursday afternoon, and the mall was moderately busy. Derek was at the main security desk, helping a teenager who'd locked her keys in her car, when he noticed a man in an expensive suit walking purposefully toward him. Everything about this guy screamed money. The suit looked custom-made. His shoes probably cost more than Derek's monthly rent, and he carried a leather briefcase that was so polished it practically glowed. The teenager thanked Derek and hurried off. The suited man stepped up to the desk with a pleasant but professional smile. "Excuse me, are you Derek Johnson?" he asked. Derek felt his stomach tighten. In his experience, when well-dressed strangers knew your name, it usually meant trouble. Had he done something wrong? Was someone filing a complaint? "Yes, sir. That's me." "Is there a problem?" "No problem at all," the man said, extending his hand. "My name is Vincent Park. I'm an attorney. Do you have a few minutes to talk privately?" Derek's mind raced. A lawyer? What could a lawyer possibly want with him? He glanced at his coworker, who nodded that he could cover the desk. "Sure," Derek said slowly. "There's a break room down the hall." Once they were seated in the empty break room, Vincent pulled out a folder from his briefcase. His demeanor was friendly but serious. "Mr. Johnson, do you remember helping an elderly gentleman about 2 weeks ago? Rainy evening, you walked him to the bus stop?" Derek's eyes widened. "Henry? The old man with the walker? Is he okay? Did something happen to him?" Vincent smiled, and it seemed genuine this time. "He's perfectly fine. Actually, he's more than fine. He was very moved by your kindness that evening. He asked me to track you down and give you this." Vincent slid an envelope across the table. It was thick, cream-colored, expensive-looking paper. Derek opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a check and a handwritten note on fancy stationery. The check was for $5,000. Derek stared at it, his brain refusing to process what he was seeing. $5,000. That was almost 4 months of his salary. That was his mom's outstanding medical bills. That was his sister's textbook money for the next 2 semesters. "This has got to be a mistake," Derek said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This can't be right." "It's not a mistake," Vincent assured him. "Mr. Caldwell was very specific about the amount." "Caldwell?" Derek looked up sharply. "I thought his name was Henry. His full name is Harrison Caldwell III. though he does prefer to go by Henry. The name sounded vaguely familiar, like something Derek had heard on the news once but couldn't quite place. He looked down at the note, written in shaky but elegant handwriting. "Dear Derek," it read, "you showed me kindness when you had no reason to, expecting nothing in return. You gave me your jacket in the cold rain and made sure I got home safely. In a world where most people looked right through me, you saw me as a human being worthy of care and respect. This small gesture is my way of saying thank you. Your compassion restored my faith in humanity. Please accept this gift with my deepest gratitude. Henry." Derek felt his throat tighten. He looked back at Vincent, shaking his head. "I can't take this. I was just doing what anyone should do. Helping people is part of my job." "Mr. Johnson, I understand your hesitation, but Mr. Caldwell was very insistent. He wants you to have this. It would actually hurt his feelings if you refused." Derek ran his hand over his face, trying to think clearly. $5,000 could change everything for his family right now. His mom had been putting off a follow-up surgery because they couldn't afford it. His sister had been talking about dropping a class because she couldn't buy the required materials. This money could solve so many problems, but taking money for just being decent felt wrong somehow. "Can I ask you something?" Derek said. "Why was Henry, Mr. Caldwell, dressed like that? Taking the bus in old clothes?" "I don't understand," Vincent's expression softened. "That's not really my story to tell, but I can say that Mr. Caldwell has his reasons for maintaining a low profile sometimes. What I can tell you is that your kindness meant more to him than you could possibly know." Derek sat there for a long moment, staring at the check. Finally, he spoke. "Can you at least get him his jacket back?" "I feel bad that I never returned it." Vincent actually laughed. "I don't think Mr. Caldwell is concerned about the jacket, but if you'd like to thank him personally, I'm sure that could be arranged." After Vincent left, Derek sat alone in the break room for another 10 minutes, just holding the check and rereading the note. Finally, he pulled out his phone and did something he probably should have done 2 weeks ago. He Googled Harrison Caldwell III. What he found made his hands go numb. Harrison Caldwell wasn't just rich. He was billionaire rich. Like, his name appeared on lists of the wealthiest people in the country. He'd made his fortune in technology back in the 70s and 80s, then expanded into manufacturing and real estate. There were articles about his massive charitable donations, his reclusive lifestyle after his wife died, his estimated net worth that had so many zeros Derek lost count. The old man, Derek, had walked to the bus stop. The one shivering in a threadbare coat was worth billions of dollars. Derek felt dizzy. He'd given a billionaire his jacket. He'd held an umbrella over one of the richest men in America while getting soaked himself. And he'd had absolutely no idea. That evening, Derek went straight to his mom's apartment after work. She was in the kitchen, making dinner despite the fact that she really should have been resting. His sister Patricia was at the table with her laptop, probably doing homework. "Derek," his mom said, turning from the stove. "I wasn't expecting you tonight. Have you eaten?" "Mom, Pat, sit down. I need to tell you something." The concern in his voice made them both stop what they were doing. Once they were all seated, Derek pulled out the check and the note, placing them on the table. Patricia picked up the check first. Her eyes went wide. "Is this real?" "Derek, what did you do?" "I helped an old man at the mall a couple weeks ago. That's it. I walked him to the bus stop in the rain." His mother read the note, tears forming in her eyes. "Oh, baby, this is wonderful. But $5,000 for walking someone to a bus stop?" Derek explained everything. Meeting Henry, giving him the jacket, waiting with him in the rain. Then Vincent showing up, the revelation about who Henry really was, the Google search that had nearly given him a heart attack. "Harrison Caldwell," his mother whispered. "Lord have mercy. You helped Harrison Caldwell? You know who he is?" Derek asked. "Everyone our age knows who he is, baby. He's a legend. Built his company from nothing. But he disappeared from public life after his wife died. People said he became a hermit." Patricia was still staring at the check. "Derek, this could pay for Mom's surgery. And my supplies for next semester. And probably fix your car that's been making that weird noise." Derek nodded slowly. "I know, but it feels strange, you know? Taking money for just being a decent person." His mother reached across the table and took his hand. "Baby, listen to me. That man didn't give you this money because he had to. He gave it to you because you showed him kindness when everyone else ignored him. You treated him like he mattered, not because of his money, but because he's a human being. That's worth everything." "Your mom's right," Patricia added. Plus, think about it this way. If you don't use this money, if you send it back, then Mom keeps suffering with her knee, I keep stressing about textbooks, and that old man doesn't get to do something nice for someone who was genuinely nice to him. Is that really better? Derek sat back in his chair, letting their words sink in. When they put it like that, refusing the money almost seemed selfish. It wasn't just about him and his pride. It was about his family's needs and about respecting Henry's gesture. Okay, he finally said. Okay, we'll use it. Mom, you're getting that surgery. Pat, you're getting your supplies and keeping your full class schedule. And maybe I'll get the car fixed before it actually dies on the highway. His mother stood up and hugged him tight, crying softly into his shoulder. Your father would be so proud of you. So proud. That night, lying in his own small apartment, Derek couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Henry, about the fact that one of the richest men in the world had been testing humanity in a way, and Derek had unknowingly passed that test. He wondered how many other people had walked past Henry that night, how many had seen him as invisible, as less than, just because of how he looked. It made Derek think about his own life, about how people sometimes looked at him in his security guard uniform, like he was part of the furniture not worth a second glance. Derek had no way of knowing that this was just the beginning. He had no idea that in 3 days Vincent would call him again with another message from Henry. He had no idea that his entire life was about to change in ways he couldn't imagine. All Derek knew, as he finally drifted off to sleep, was that kindness mattered. It always had and it always would. And sometimes, in ways you'd never expect, it came back around. 3 days after receiving the check, Derek was on his lunch break when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? Mr. Johnson, this is Vincent Park. We spoke earlier this week. Derek sat up straighter on the bench outside the mall. Yes, of course. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. Actually, Mr. Caldwell would like to meet with you personally. He wants to thank you in person and perhaps have lunch if you're available. Would this Saturday work for you? Derek's mind went blank for a second. Lunch with a billionaire? Yeah, Saturday's my day off. But are you sure? I mean, he already gave me that generous gift. He doesn't need to do anything else. He's quite insistent, Vincent said warmly. Shall we say 1 o'clock? I'll text you the address. It's a restaurant downtown, nothing too formal, but perhaps business casual attire. After hanging up, Derek stared at his phone in disbelief. Business casual. He owned exactly 1 pair of dress pants and 2 button-up shirts that weren't his work uniform. This was going to be interesting. Saturday came faster than Derek expected. He'd spent the previous evening ironing his clothes 3 times, wanting to make a good impression. His sister had laughed at his nervousness, but his mom had understood. She'd fixed his collar before he left and told him to just be himself. The restaurant was in a part of downtown Derek rarely visited, the kind of place with a valet out front and cloth napkins instead of paper. Derek felt out of place the moment he walked through the door, but the hostess greeted him warmly. Mr. Johnson, right this way. Mr. Caldwell is expecting you. She led him through the main dining area to a private room in the back, and there, sitting at a table set for 2, was Henry. But this Henry looked different from the man Derek had met in the rain. He wore a nice sweater and slacks, his hair was neatly combed, and he looked healthier somehow. More vibrant. Yet his eyes held that same gentle kindness Derek remembered. Henry stood up, smiling broadly. Derek, thank you so much for coming. They shook hands, and Henry gestured for Derek to sit. A waiter appeared immediately, offering water and menus, then discreetly disappeared. Mr. Caldwell, I really don't know what to say, Derek began. That check, it was too much. You didn't have to. Please call me Henry, the old man interrupted gently, and I absolutely did have to. Derek, can I tell you something? Can I explain why that night at the mall meant so much to me? Derek nodded, curious despite his nervousness. Henry settled back in his chair, his expression growing more serious. 2 years ago, my wife passed away. Margaret was my everything. We were married for 53 years. After she died, I realized that the life I'd been living, surrounded by people who saw me as a checkbook, felt empty. Meaningless. He paused, taking a sip of water. So I started doing something unusual. I'd dress in old clothes, simple things, and I'd go to regular places. Shopping malls, parks, bus stops. I wanted to see how people treated me when they didn't know who I was. When they just saw an old man who looked like he didn't have much. Derek listened, beginning to understand. Do you know what I discovered? Henry continued, his voice heavy with sadness. Most people didn't see me at all. They looked right through me like I was invisible. Some people were actively unkind. I had doors closed in my face, people who refused to let me sit on benches next to them. Security guards and other places who followed me around like I might steal something. Derek felt his chest tighten with anger on Henry's behalf. That night at your mall, I was in a dark place mentally, Henry admitted. I was starting to think that maybe genuine kindness didn't exist anymore, that maybe everyone was just looking out for themselves. And then you appeared. Henry's eyes grew misty. You didn't just help me find the exit. You gave me your jacket. You walked me to the bus stop in the pouring rain. You waited with me to make sure I got on safely. And when I asked your name, you seemed almost embarrassed, like helping people was just what anyone would do. It is what anyone should do, Derek said quietly. But they don't, Henry replied firmly. That's my point. You restored something in me that night, Derek. You reminded me that there are still good people in this world. People who help others not because they expect something in return, but because it's the right thing to do. They ordered lunch, and as they ate, the conversation became easier, more natural. Henry asked about Derek's family, his life, his dreams. Derek found himself opening up in ways he rarely did, telling Henry about his dad's death, about dropping out of college to support his mom and sister, about his half-forgotten dreams of maybe running his own business someday. Business management, you said? That was your major? Henry asked. Yeah, for one semester before I had to quit. I wanted to learn how to run a company. Maybe start something of my own eventually, but that's just a pipe dream now. Henry was quiet for a moment, seeming to consider something carefully. Then he set down his fork and looked Derek straight in the eye. What if it didn't have to be a dream? What if you could finish your degree? Derek laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mr. Caldwell, Henry, I appreciate the thought, but community college costs money I don't have. Even with that generous check you gave me, that money's spoken for. Medical bills, my sister's education, basic living expenses. I can't afford to not work full-time. What if you could do both? Henry asked. What if I told you I have a position available at my charitable foundation? Director of Community Outreach? It would involve working with underprivileged communities, finding ways to make real differences in people's lives. The salary would be 3 times what you make now, with full benefits for your entire family, and I'd pay for you to complete your degree at whatever school you choose. Derek felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. He must have heard wrong. I'm sorry, what? I want to offer you a job, Derek. A real career opportunity. You've shown me you have the character and compassion needed for this work. The business skills we can teach you, but integrity? That can't be taught. You either have it or you don't. But I have no experience, Derek protested, his mind reeling. I'm a security guard. I don't have the qualifications for something like that. You have exactly the qualifications that matter most, Henry insisted. You understand what it's like to struggle. You know how to treat people with dignity regardless of their circumstances. You've shown leadership in your current position. Your supervisor told me you're the best employee they have. You talked to my supervisor. Henry smiled sheepishly. I had Vincent do some background checking. I hope you don't mind. Nothing invasive, just confirming what I already knew about your character. Derek sat back overwhelmed. A job paying 3 times his current salary. Benefits for his family. His mom could get proper treatment. His sister wouldn't have to stress about money. And he could finish his degree, something he'd given up on completely. Why would you do this? Derek asked, his voice cracking slightly. You don't even know me. We met once for maybe 20 minutes. Henry reached across the table, his aged hand surprisingly steady. Derek, I've spent my entire life in business. I've interviewed hundreds of people, worked with thousands more, and I've learned that you can tell more about a person's character in one genuine moment than in 100 rehearsed interviews. That night in the rain, you showed me who you really are, and that's someone I want in my foundation, helping to make the world a little better. Derek felt tears threatening, and he blinked them back. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it, Henry replied. I'm not asking for an answer right now. This is a big decision. Talk it over with your family. Take a week if you need it. But Derek, I really hope you'll say yes. I think you could do incredible things with this opportunity. They finished lunch, and as Derek prepared to leave, Henry handed him a folder containing the official job offer. benefits package, and information about the foundation's work. Walking out of that restaurant, Derek felt like he was in a dream. On the bus ride home, he kept opening the folder and reading the details, making sure it was real. The salary alone would change everything for his family, but more than that, it was the chance to do something meaningful, to help people the way he'd always wanted to. When he got home, his mom and Patricia were waiting anxiously, wanting to know how lunch went. Derek told them everything, his voice shaking with emotion. By the end, all three of them were crying. "Baby, this is it," his mom said, holding his face in her hands. "This is your chance. You have to take it." "But what if I fail?" Derek admitted. "What if I'm not good enough?" Patricia grabbed his shoulders. "Derek, you've been good enough your whole life. You've been taking care of us, working hard, staying humble. It's time to let someone take care of you for once. It's time to let yourself dream again." That night, Derek sat alone in his small apartment, looking at the job offer one more time. He thought about his dad, wondering what he would say. He thought about that rainy night 2 weeks ago, how he'd had no idea that one simple act of kindness would lead to this moment. And he thought about what kind of man he wanted to be. Someone who played it safe, or someone who had the courage to take a chance when opportunity knocked. Derek picked up his phone and typed a message to Vincent. "Please tell Henry I accept, and thank you." He hit send before he could overthink it. Whatever came next, whatever challenges lay ahead, Derek was ready. His life was about to change in ways he couldn't even imagine yet. Derek's first day at the Caldwell Foundation felt like stepping into another world. The building itself was impressive, all glass and modern architecture, but it was the people inside that made him nervous. Everyone seemed so polished, so confident, walking around with tablets and talking about grants and initiatives like it was second nature. He wore his one good suit, the one he'd bought for his father's funeral 4 years ago. It still fit, barely, but he knew it looked cheap compared to what everyone else was wearing. His mom had helped him pick out a new tie, though, and Patricia had made sure his shoes were polished until they shined. Vincent met him in the lobby and gave him a tour. The foundation occupied 3 floors of the building. There were conference rooms with floor-to-ceiling windows, a cafeteria that looked nicer than most restaurants Derek had been to, and offices filled with people working on programs that helped communities across the country. "Don't worry about feeling overwhelmed," Vincent said, as they rode the elevator. "Everyone feels that way their first week. Henry believes in throwing people into the deep end, but he also makes sure you have support while you learn to swim." Derek's office was small, but had a window. His own window. He'd never had an office before, let alone one with a view. His nameplate was already on the door. "Derek Johnson, Director of Community Outreach." "Henry wants to see you at 10, Vincent said, checking his watch. "That gives you about 30 minutes to settle in. Your assistant, Melissa, will be by in a few minutes to go over your schedule for the week." Assistant. Derek had an assistant. This was going to take some getting used to. Melissa turned out to be a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She walked Derek through his calendar, explaining the various meetings scheduled for his first week. Orientation sessions, introductions to different department heads, lunch with the program directors. "It's a lot, I know," she said sympathetically, "but you'll get the hang of it. And if you need anything at all, just ask. That's what I'm here for." At 10 o'clock sharp, Derek made his way to Henry's office on the top floor. The executive suite was even more impressive than the rest of the building. Henry's secretary waved him through with a smile. Henry's office was surprisingly modest given his wealth. Sure, it was spacious and well-appointed, but it wasn't showy. There, photos on the walls, pictures of communities the foundation had helped. Not awards or accolades, and prominently displayed on a shelf was Derek's old jacket, the one he'd given Henry that rainy night. "Derek." Henry stood and came around his desk, shaking Derek's hand warmly. "How are you feeling?" "First day jitters?" "More like first day terror," Derek admitted with a nervous laugh. Henry chuckled. "That's normal. Sit, please. I want to talk to you about something important before you get too deep into the work." They sat in comfortable chairs by the window, and Henry's expression grew serious. "Derek, I'm not going to lie to you. Some people here aren't going to be happy about your hiring. You're young, you don't have a college degree yet, and you're coming from outside the nonprofit world. There will be people who question whether you deserve to be here." Derek's stomach sank, but he nodded. He'd expected this. I'm telling you this not to scare you, Henry continued, but to prepare you. The most important thing you can do is trust yourself. You have instincts about people and communities that many of these folks with fancy degrees will never have. Don't let anyone make you feel less than. I'll do my best, Derek said quietly. I know you will. And Derek, I didn't hire you as charity. I hired you because I believe you're exactly what this foundation needs. Don't ever forget that. The first week was a whirlwind. Derek attended meeting after meeting, trying to absorb information about grant applications, community partnerships, budget allocations, and impact assessments. His brain felt like it might explode from all the new terminology. Some people were genuinely welcoming. The program directors seemed excited to have someone new on the team, someone who might bring fresh perspectives. But others were less friendly. There was a man named Raymond Ashford, the deputy director, who'd been with the foundation for 15 years. He was in his late 40s, impeccably dressed with degrees from prestigious universities lining his office wall. From the moment they met, Derek could feel the man's disapproval. "So you're Henry's new project," Raymond said during their first meeting, not bothering to hide the condescension in his voice. "Security guard to director. That's quite a leap. I'm here to learn and work hard," Derek replied evenly, refusing to take the bait. We'll see how long that enthusiasm lasts when you realize this isn't just about being nice to people. This is serious work that requires serious expertise." Derek said nothing, but he felt the sting of the comment. It was going to be like this then. He'd have to prove himself every single day. That evening, Derek started his first online class for his business degree. Henry had arranged for him to attend a respected university's evening program, all expenses paid. Sitting in his small apartment, laptop open, Derek felt the weight of everything. The new job, the school, the expectations, the people who wanted him to fail. His phone buzzed. A text from his mom. "How was day one, baby? We're so proud of you." Derek smiled, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. He typed back, challenging but good. "I got this." The weeks turned into a month and Derek slowly found his footing. He spent his days learning the foundation's programs and his evenings studying for his classes. It was exhausting, but he was determined not to let Henry down. Then, about 6 weeks into the job, something happened that would test everything. Derek was reviewing grant applications when he noticed something odd. There was a youth program that had been receiving funding for 3 years, but the impact report seemed vague. The numbers didn't quite add up. He spent hours comparing different reports, making notes, trying to understand what he was seeing. Finally, he took his concerns to Melissa. "This grant, the one for the youth mentorship program in the East District," he said, showing her his notes. "Something feels off about it. The funding keeps increasing, but the number of kids being served stays almost the same. And look at these expense reports. They're spending way more on administrative costs than actual programming." Melissa's face went pale as she looked at the documents. "Derek, do you know who oversees this particular grant?" "No, who?" "Raymond Ashford. He's been the primary contact for this program since it started." Derek felt his stomach drop. Of course it was Raymond. The man already didn't like him. If Derek raised questions about a program Raymond oversaw, it would look like he was trying to undermine him. But if these numbers were wrong, if money meant for kids was being misused, he couldn't just ignore it. "What should I do?" Derek asked. Melissa thought for a moment. "You need to be absolutely sure before you say anything. Double-check everything. And Derek, be careful. Raymond has a lot of influence here. If you're going to challenge him, you better be right." Derek spent the next week digging deeper whenever he had a spare moment. He requested additional documentation, reviewed bank statements, compared the program's results to similar initiatives. The more he looked, the more convinced he became that something was seriously wrong. Money that should have been going to help underprivileged teenagers was being diverted. Not all of it, but enough to matter, enough to make a difference in kids' lives. And the trail seemed to lead back to the program director who had close ties to Raymond. Derek barely slept that week. He kept thinking about those kids who weren't getting the help they needed. He thought about his own sister, how much those opportunities had meant to her. How could he stay silent? But he also thought about his job, about his family depending on his income now. His mom had finally gotten her surgery. Patricia was thriving in school without having to work part-time. If Derek accused Raymond of mishandling funds and he was wrong, or if he couldn't prove it, he'd be fired. Worse, he'd be blacklisted from nonprofit work forever. On Friday evening, Derek sat in his apartment with all his evidence spread across his small dining table. His phone rang. It was Henry, just calling to check in like he did every week or so. "How are you settling in?" Henry asked. "Tell me the truth. Is the work what you expected?" Derek looked at the papers on his table, took a deep breath, and made a decision. "Henry, I need to talk to you about something. Something serious. Can we meet?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Of course. My office Monday morning, first thing. Derek, is everything okay?" "I don't know yet," Derek answered honestly. "But I need your advice on something important." After hanging up, Derek sat back and stared at the ceiling. He'd crossed a line now. There was no going back. Either he was about to expose real wrongdoing and help those kids, or he was about to make a huge mistake that would cost him everything. He thought about that night in the rain, about helping Henry without expecting anything in return. He'd done it because it was right, not because it was easy or safe. This was the same thing. It wasn't about protecting himself. It was about doing what was right even when it was scary, even when the cost might be everything he'd gained. Derek gathered his evidence, put it in a folder, and set it by his door for Monday. Whatever happened next, he'd be able to look himself in the mirror. And right now that mattered more than anything else. Monday morning came too quickly. Derek arrived at the foundation an hour early, the folder of evidence clutched in his hand. He'd barely slept all weekend, running through every possible outcome in his mind. None of them were good if he was wrong about this. Henry's secretary wasn't at her desk yet, but Henry's door was open. The older man was already there, looking out the window with a cup of coffee in his hand. "Come in, Derek," Henry said without turning around. "Close the door and have a seat." Derek did as he was told, his heart hammering in his chest. Henry turned and studied him for a long moment before sitting down across from him, not behind his desk, but in the chair next to Derek's. "You look like you haven't slept," Henry observed. "This must be serious." Derek opened the folder with shaking hands. "I found something. About one of our grant programs. I've checked and double-checked everything, and I'm pretty sure money is being misused, money that's supposed to help kids." He walked Henry through everything he'd discovered. The inconsistencies in the reports, the inflated administrative costs, the stagnant number of participants, despite increased funding. Henry listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each page. When Derek finished, there was a long silence. Finally, Henry spoke. "You know whose program this is, don't you?" "Raymond Ashford oversees it," Derek confirmed. "I know what this looks like. The new guy, the one without credentials trying to take down someone who's been here for 15 years. I know how this could backfire on me." Henry leaned forward. "Then why are you bringing this to me? Why not just keep your head down, do your job, and ignore it?" Derek met his eyes. "Because that's not who I am. You didn't hire me because of my resume. You hired me because of who you thought I was as a person. If I ignore this, if I let kids get cheated out of help they need just to protect myself, then I'm not that person anymore." A smile slowly spread across Henry's face. "That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. Derek, I'm going to tell you something that stays between us. I've suspected Raymond of impropriety for almost a year. But he's careful, and he has friends on the board. I've been waiting for solid evidence." Derek felt his jaw drop. "You knew?" "I suspected. There's a difference. What you've brought me, this is evidence. This is something we can act on." Henry stood and walked to his desk. "I'm going to bring in our legal team and an independent auditor. This is going to get messy, Derek. Raymond won't go quietly. Are you prepared for that?" "I don't know," Derek admitted. "But I'm ready to deal with whatever comes." The next 2 weeks were some of the hardest of Derek's life. The auditors came in, and word spread quickly through the foundation that something big was happening. Raymond figured out that Derek was involved, and the man's hostility turned to outright aggression. "You've made a huge mistake," Raymond cornered Derek in the hallway one afternoon. "You think you can come in here with no experience, no background, and take me down? I have friends on the board. I have 15 years of relationships. You're nobody." Derek kept his voice steady. "This isn't about you or me. It's about making sure the foundation's money goes where it's supposed to." "You self-righteous little punk," Raymond hissed. "When this is over, you'll be the one out on the street." But the audit revealed what Derek had suspected and more. Raymond and the program director had been skimming money for years, hundreds of thousands of dollars that should have helped disadvantaged youth. The program director was immediately fired, and Raymond was forced to resign. Several board members who had looked the other way also quietly stepped down. Henry called a foundation-wide meeting to address what had happened. Derek stood at the back of the room as Henry explained the situation, careful not to name Derek but making it clear that someone had shown the courage to speak up. "This foundation exists to help people," Henry said, his voice carrying through the conference room. "When we fail in that mission, when we allow corruption to take root, we betray everyone who trusts us. I'm grateful that we have people here who still remember what integrity means." After the meeting, several co-workers approached Derek. Some thanked him quietly. Others looked at him with new respect. But a few still saw him as a troublemaker, someone who disrupted the comfortable status quo. Derek didn't care about any of that. What mattered was that the program was being restructured, and those kids would finally get the help they deserved. 2 months later, Henry called Derek to his office again. But this time the old man was smiling. "Sit down, Derek, I have news." Derek took his usual seat, curious about the excited energy radiating from Henry. "The board met yesterday," Henry began. "We've been discussing the foundation's future, particularly in light of recent events. We need leadership with integrity, people who care more about our mission than their own careers." Henry paused, his eyes twinkling. "Derek, we'd like to promote you to Director of Program Integrity and Community Impact. It's a senior leadership position. You'd oversee not just outreach, but ensure that all our programs are operating ethically and effectively." Derek felt like he'd been hit by a truck. "Henry, I haven't even finished my degree. I've only been here a few months. And in those few months, you've shown more leadership and moral courage than some people show in a lifetime." "Derek, I didn't bring you here to be ordinary. I brought you here because I saw something special in you." The board agrees. Derek thought about his journey. From standing in the rain with a stranger to sitting in this office, being offered a position he'd never dreamed possible. It felt surreal. "There's something else," Henry continued. "I'm not going to be around forever. I'm 82 years old, and while I feel fine now, I need to start thinking about legacy. About what happens to this foundation when I'm gone." He pulled out a document and slid it across the desk. "I'm establishing a $50 million endowment. It's going to be called the Second Chance Initiative. Its sole purpose will be to provide opportunities to people in service industry jobs. Security guards, janitors, retail workers, people who work hard but don't always get the chances they deserve. People like you were." Derek's eyes filled with tears as he read the document. "Henry, this is incredible." "You'll manage it," Henry said. "You'll decide who gets help, what programs we fund, how we change lives. Because you understand what it's like to be invisible, to be overlooked. You won't forget these people the way society often does." Over the next year, Derek's life transformed in ways he still couldn't quite believe. He finished his degree, graduating with honors while working full-time. His mom's health improved dramatically with proper medical care. Patricia graduated college debt-free and got accepted to graduate school. But more than his personal life, Derek was changing other people's lives too. The Second Chance Initiative funded scholarships, job training programs, and small business grants for service workers across the country. Every application that came across Derek's desk, he read personally, looking for people who reminded him of himself. People who just needed one chance, one person to believe in them. Henry became more than a boss or a benefactor. He became family. Derek had dinner at Henry's house every Sunday, and the old man loved hearing stories about the people they were helping. Sometimes Henry would tear up, saying that all of this was what his wealth was meant for. On Derek's 30th birthday, something amazing happened. His girlfriend Rachel, a teacher he'd met at a foundation fundraiser, was pregnant with their first child. Derek's mom was healthy and happy. Patricia had a great job lined up after graduation, and Derek stood at a press conference next to Henry, announcing the expansion of the Second Chance Initiative. Reporters asked Derek about his story, about going from security guard to foundation executive. Derek thought carefully about his answer. 5 years ago, I did something simple, he said into the microphone. I helped an old man in the rain. I gave him my jacket and made sure he got home safe. I didn't do it for a reward. I did it because it was right. He looked at Henry, who was wiping his eyes. But that one small act of kindness opened doors I never knew existed. Henry saw something in me I didn't see in myself. He gave me a chance when I had nothing but a high school diploma and a good work ethic. This initiative is about doing the same thing for thousands of other people, because everyone deserves a chance to be seen, to be valued, to reach their potential. After the press conference, Henry pulled Derek aside. "You know what the best part of all this is?" the old man asked. "What's that?" "That night in the mall, I was testing humanity. I wanted to see if genuine kindness still existed. You proved it did. But Derek, you didn't just restore my faith in people. You showed me what's possible when you invest in character instead of credentials. You've made me prouder than any business success ever did." Derek hugged him, not caring that they were in public or that cameras might be watching. "You gave me back my dreams, Henry. You gave my family security and hope. I'll spend the rest of my life paying that forward." That evening, Derek drove home through the same streets where he used to take the bus. He passed the mall where he'd worked as a security guard, where his life had changed in the rain one Tuesday evening. He thought about that version of himself, the one who'd given away his jacket without a second thought. He was still that person, Derek realized. Success hadn't changed his core values. Money hadn't made him forget where he came from. If anything, it had strengthened his commitment to helping others the way Henry had helped him. His phone rang. It was a young woman who'd received a second-chance grant. She'd been a housekeeping supervisor at a hotel, and now she was opening her own cleaning business. She called to thank Derek, crying with joy. "You changed my life," she said. "You gave me hope when I thought I'd be stuck forever." Derek smiled, tears in his own eyes. "Just pay it forward," he told her. "Help someone else when you get the chance. That's how we change the world, one act of kindness at a time." As he pulled into his parking spot, Derek looked up at the sky. Somewhere he hoped his father was watching, proud of the man his son had become, and he hoped that anyone facing their own rainy night, their own moment of doubt, would choose kindness anyway. Because you never know whose life you might change. You never know what doors might open. But more importantly, you never know how much your simple act of humanity might mean to someone who desperately needs to believe in goodness again. That was the real gift Henry had given him. Not money or opportunity, but the reminder that character matters more than credentials, that kindness is never wasted, and that sometimes, helping one person in the rain can change everything.